use, the local principals and the superintendents of the schools, how they have been handling it. Some have taken very, very tacit approaches to them. Others have outright condemned them and said, listen, we're going to treat this walkout as any other, and we will approach them from the same disciplinary procedure as if a student were walking out for any other reason. And others have turned them into, in essence, school-sanctioned events. Well, and so it's really been the focus on that and really what's behind that.
It angers me that you've got adults that, in my view, those who are perpetuating these walkouts or authorizing them or facilitating them, using the children as pawns in a political game. I mean, it's not right.
And we saw local news coverage here detailing the schools that took part in this walkout and the students who took part in it, and apparently it was optional. And it looked very minimal.
Mm-hmm.
You're looking at auditoriums with anywhere from 10 to 50 kids in schools where you have hundreds, if not thousands, of students. But there was also a story that came out. I'm not sure which state it was, but one student who did walk out with a sign that said, "People don't kill people, guns kill people," was basically escorted off school property by the principal. And what?
Yeah.
What are you talking about, Dad? Hold on.
You better rethink that. What did that sign say?
It said,
"People kill people, not guns."
Guns don't kill people. People kill people.
Right. You said it backwards.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, he was escorted off school property by the principal and threatened to be placed in a police car for holding his sign. So, obviously we talk about this all the time. Free speech only applies to speech that the left agrees with. But to politicize this event even further, to bring and then celebrating it on national news by having the students, forcing them to be involved or saying it's part of the school functions and procedures, absolutely, some of the worst things that they can do here. And they continue to move forward with this.
Yeah. Well, and I think and it was funny. I had somebody who said to me off air, they said, I would be willing to bet you if these were pro-gun rallies, you wouldn't have a problem with it. And I said, to be honest with you, I actually would. And here's the thing. It has no place in the school system. It is disruptive. It is materially invasive, and it has no place in the school system. And so, and I would say that this has no place and it's turning into a de facto anti-gun rally. There's no question about it. When you look at the organization that put this on, this Women's March Youth Empower organization, it is at its core a social Marxist organization. All you need to do is go to their website, womensmarch.org or .com or whatever it is, and look at their mission statement, and you will see that it is chock full of these social Marxist buzzwords that, obviously we've come to expect from organizations like that. They're community organizers, they're community agitators, and they have a leftist agenda, and that is crystal clear through their mission statement. So it is tacit acceptance of the agenda of this organization for a public school system to permit this. And, it's interesting because the people now who are advocating for these say, well, kids have a First Amendment right, and they cite this court case. And I forgive me, I've been talking literally since 5:30 this morning. I think it's with Tucker v. Des Moines or Rinker v. Des Moines, one of those Supreme Court cases, where in the 60s, the late 60s, it was a 7-2 decision that said that students do not leave their constitutional rights and their right to free speech at the gates of the schoolhouse, was, I believe, how the justices worded it. But it was also limiting in that, in as much as, and when you look at what the original question was here, it involved a group of students who were wearing black armbands in addition to their school uniform. This was back in the 60s when even public schools had uniforms oftentimes. And they were wearing black armbands to show their opposition to the Vietnam War. And so there's a big difference between wearing a black armband in a silent protest and literally getting up and walking out of the building. And here's why. When you're talking about children, 15, 16, 17-year-old high school kids, when a parent drops that child off to the school then assumes legal custody of that child. They are responsible legally for the care, the control, and the custody of that child until such time as they are released from the school's custody and go back into the custody of their parents. It's basically how it works. If something happens to that child while that child is under the care of the school is obviously going to be liable because they deviated from their standard of care, what the expectations were, their expectations of performance. So if you have a group of kids who are now getting up and walking out, it is a material interruption. It is substantially disruptive to the operation of that school, which was the language that was used in that Supreme Court case. And therefore, the school does have a right to restrict the disruptive free speech of students. So that way they're obviously the main objective of a school, which is to educate, can be met. Now, that being said, if you have...
I just want to reaffirm this, give your voice a break too, by the way, and we so appreciate you coming on. That was Tinker v. Des Moines Independent Community,
yeah.
Right, and that was back in 1969. And as a matter of fact, this, believe it or not, this decision came up in a conversation I had probably 2 weeks ago, and that's as soon as you said that, I remembered that, and it's you're correct in that. So I'm sorry, I just want to make sure if people want to look this up, it's Tinker v. Des Moines. Go ahead, sir.
If I want to wear a T-shirt, I want to wear a sweatshirt that expresses my viewpoints, then, the decision in Tinker v. Des Moines would be that would be constitutionally protected because it is not creating a material or substantial disruption or interruption to the operations of that school. But now when you have groups of students who are getting up in the middle of a class and walking out, now faculty and administration from that educational body are now required to supervise those kids while they are outside. It is creating a material disruption to the operation of that school. So, again, I would encourage anybody who sees the flip side of this, please explain to me how, when you have a group of kids that are leaving the school that require staff to now leave the school with them to provide that care, custody, and control, how that is not a material disruption of that school's operation. And I would have an issue with this if it were a Second Amendment issue as well, pro-Second Amendment issue, to be honest with you. Listen, you want to become civically engaged, that's great. Do it on your own time. And I think the schools that feel the need to do this, well, that's fantastic. Hold an assembly. Hold an after-school event. Hold a candlelight vigil. I don't care. Wear the pink vagina hats, light candles, and sing Kumbaya. But do it on your own time. If this is such an important issue, then allow the children and their parents to show up at a school-sanctioned event outside of school hours where they can express their concerns, sing Kumbaya, have prayer circle, whatever it is they want to do. But it does not have to be during the daytime operation of that school. And I would maintain that standpoint even if it were like I said, a pro-Second Amendment argument or issue or rally or school walkout.
Well, we've seen that these schools have become hotbeds for the political ideology, specifically of the left, and this is so apparent when we talk about the gender identity problem that we're seeing, the pushing of homosexuality and transsexualism, where it's actually becoming part of the curriculum, a mandated curriculum. And absolutely, I'm sure everybody in the room would agree that if the parents have the ability to homeschool their children, do so, because sending them to a public school at this point, or sending them away to school at this point, is tantamount to indoctrinating them with propaganda and lies, and they're not receiving an education, they're receiving a political ideology.
Well, that's correct. And I mean, once again, and we've talked about this on previous episodes of your shows, where the left is looking at children as a great opportunity to expand their propaganda arm. And that's really what it boils down to. And Oxford Dictionary defines the phrase useful idiot. And these children are being used and manipulated by unscrupulous progressives to further this agenda, to further this message of gun confiscation, of anti-gun. As a matter of fact, I just left a private school where I just spent 2.5 hours reviewing active shooter and armed intruder emergency action plans for this school. And, this is something that, once again, the conversation came up about, well, should we arm our teachers? Well, that's something that you need to take to your parents and your board of directors, and you need to figure out whether or not you want to do that. It certainly is an option. I mean, now this is a private, it's a private classical Catholic academy. And so they're, I think, I don't want to use the word progressive, so I'll say this. They're a little bit more proactive in their defensive planning and defensive posturing than I think the majority of the public schools would be.
And we, one of the things that really bothers me is they're in most of these schools that are now, as we said, political hotbeds, there's no room for the counter argument. You don't have both sides being presented. And what kind of deviant monsters, have it in their mind, have it in their agenda that it is okay to take and to, make these children soldiers of a political ideology through brainwashing. It is evil to its core. I mean, this is what the Nazis did. Get them while they're young and you'll have them for life. I'm not sure who said that, but it's a famous quote. And it's a huge problem, and it's one of the reasons our country is the way it is today, because of generations of constant changes to the curriculum, and really the agenda or goals of what they want for students are no longer for them to be their best and brightest, but to come out thinking the way that the society or the power structure wants them to think. And this is why it's so dangerous. No creativity, no individual thought.
Well, the quote that you're referring to actually came from Adolf Hitler and his Mein Kampf. And the reason that I'm aware of that is because a very good friend of mine who is a Republican state representative in New Hampshire just became the target of the New Hampshire Democrat Party because she retweeted a meme with Adolf Hitler standing with children with that quote. And, of course, everybody who received that meme in her retweet understood the context of that. Unfortunately, the Democrat Party turned around and manipulated it to make it look as though it were an endorsement of Adolf Hitler and his policy of children. And this is the immoral depths to which progressive Democrats, and primarily Raymond Buckley, who at one point was being eyeballed for the national DNC chair. He, unfortunately, that degenerate scumbag, I can tell you how I really feel if you'd like. Ray Buckley is the lowest of the low. When you think a human being could not possibly sink any lower, you need to look at the degenerate reprobate that runs the Democrat Party in the state of New Hampshire named Raymond Buckley. And you will find out just how low a human being can sink.
Oh, he just crossed you off.
Unfortunately,
he just crossed you off his Christmas card list. I'll tell you that. But go ahead.
He crossed me off. He crossed me off his Christmas card list when he swore that he would never ever talk to me again, which is not a big, I'm not shedding any tears, believe me. I'm not crying myself to sleep on my big Donald Trump pillow over that one. But he came out and he said, you're New Hampshire's very own right-wing conservative shock jock, and I want nothing to do with you. And I said, okay, that's fine. If you don't want to come on and defend your party's politics, that's fine. I'll have no problem systematically dismantling you on air without the benefit of you having the opportunity to defend yourself. I don't need you to defend yourself. We understand exactly what you are and the substance of your character, which is lower than primordial pond scum.
I've been following. I don't want to admit this. I've been monitoring his Twitter account, and wow, just wow.
Ray Buckley?
Yeah, Buckley.
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, if you and I would encourage people to check it out. I'm sure he'll love the spike in his Twitter followers at Chairman Buckley, Buckley. And when you look at the absolute vitriolic refuse, the offal that spills out of this guy, listen, this is a guy who's an avowed homosexual who, when MySpace was popular, spent most of his time trolling around in gay chat rooms, which were populated with underage boys.
Ooh.
So this goes to show you the content of Ray Buckley's character.
Okay. Wow. Yeah, it's okay. Period. After that sentence. Yeah, it's interesting nonetheless. And of course, he doesn't get censored on Twitter. Of course not.
Of course not.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
But of course we digress. And it was interesting, So I had a conversation today with a Democrat member of a local city council. We actually have some pretty good conversations. We're pretty respectful of one another. And I was expressing to her my discontent with a letter that was put out by one of the local middle school principals that turned this school walkout into a walkout assembly. And she said, well, I think it's important that kids get involved in civics. And I said, okay, well, then here's what I want to do. Since you're a city councilor and you're plugged into the school system, then I want you to help me get an event organized where we hold a walkout and 13 minutes of silence for the roughly 1,300 unborn children that were murdered via abortion yesterday. If we're going to have a 17-minute walkout